Living off-grid in Australia in 2026 offers something many people now see as priceless: total independence. It removes the burden of annual electricity bills that typically run between $2,000 and $3,000, water bills that average $1,000, sewage charges of about $800, and the ongoing control councils exert over how people live. But there is a crucial truth many people only discover when it is too late. Off-grid living is not automatically legal across Australia. In most metropolitan councils and many regional areas, homeowners are required by law to connect to electricity, town water, and sewage even when they do not want those services and even when they can provide their own systems. Building regulations often prohibit alternative housing such as sheds, shipping containers, tiny homes, and unconventional dwellings. Zoning laws can eliminate the entire off-grid lifestyle before land is even purchased. Successful off-grid living is not just about installing solar panels and water tanks. The real key is choosing locations where councils either formally support alternative housing or quietly allow it through non-enforcement. These places are not necessarily the most isolated parts of Australia. Instead, they are practical sweet spots where land is affordable, councils are tolerant, water is available through rainfall or bores, the climate is manageable, and basic services like medical care remain within reach. Establishing a full off-grid property typically costs between $60,000 and $100,000, including land, housing, solar, water systems, and septic. That figure is less than a single year's rent in Sydney. In other words, what most people pay to landlords every year can instead purchase permanent independence. To determine where this lifestyle actually works, extensive research was carried out. Council policies were examined, shire planners were contacted, enforcement practices were compared with written rules, and off-grid residents in each region were interviewed about real-world experiences. From this investigation, 12 towns and shires emerged as the most viable locations for off-grid living in Australia in 2026, offering either formal approval or practical tolerance. At number 12 is the Shire of Menzies in Western Australia. This remote goldfield shire has about 150 permanent residents spread across a vast area roughly 700 kilometers east of Perth. Official shire policies explicitly allow alternative housing, including insulated shed conversions, tiny houses on trailers, and shipping containers on residential blocks. Building permits are still required, but standards are far more relaxed than in cities. Enforcement is minimal because the council wants to attract residents. Land costs between $10,000 and $20,000. Annual rainfall is only 200 to 300 millimeters, meaning at least 50,000 liters of water storage is required. Bores are possible, though water quality varies. Solar conditions are excellent year-round. A realistic setup includes $15,000 for land, $40,000 for a shed conversion, $12,000 for solar, $8,000 for water systems, and $4,000 for septic, bringing the total to about $79,000. Extreme heat above 45 degrees Celsius, minimal medical services, and 700-kilometer travel distances are the trade-offs. But legal clarity is absolute. Number 11 is the Shire of Kew, Western Australia. This goldfield shire has about 200 residents and sits roughly 650 kilometers northeast of Perth. It formally supports shed dwellings and alternative housing on residential blocks. Building approvals are fast and standards are relaxed. Land costs $8,000 to $15,000. Rainfall averages 250 millimeters, so large tanks are needed. Bores provide workable water quality. Solar is excellent. Typical costs are $12,000 for land, $35,000 for housing, $11,000 for solar, $7,000 for water, and $3,000 for septic, totaling about $68,000. Services are minimal and heat is extreme, but council support is rock solid. Number 10 is the Shire of Ravensthorpe, Western Australia. This southern coastal shire has around 500 residents and sits 550 kilometers from Perth. While formal rules require standard homes, enforcement against quality alternative dwellings is relaxed. The coastal town of Hopetown is only 15 kilometers away. Land ranges from $20,000 to $40,000. Rainfall improves to 400 millimeters annually. Bores and solar are reliable. A full setup costs roughly $98,000, including $30,000 for land and $68,000 for infrastructure. A medical center, shops, and a Mediterranean climate make this one of the more comfortable options. Number 9 is Tenterfield Shire in New South Wales. This Highland Shire, near the Queensland border, has about 7,000 people and sits 650 kilometers north of Sydney. It has an established off-grid community, and council enforcement is complaint-based rather than proactive. Land of 5 to 20 hectares costs $30,000 to $60,000. Rainfall averages 800 millimeters. Solar is strong, though winter output drops. With $45,000 for land and $57,000 for infrastructure, the total comes to roughly $102,000. A hospital, schools, and shops make it socially and practically viable. Number 8 is the Shire of Cullen, Western Australia. With about 400 residents and located 300 kilometers north of Perth, Cullen offers free residential land and supports sheds and containers. Rainfall is 350 millimeters, bores are available, and solar is excellent. With free land, total setup costs are around $65,000. Services are basic, heat is significant, but it is one of the cheapest options available. Number 7 is the Shire of Westonia, Western Australia. About 250 people live here, 300 kilometers east of Perth. Free land is available and alternative housing is explicitly supported. With $56,000 in infrastructure, off-grid living is affordable. Heat and isolation are the main challenges. Number 6 is the Shire of Yalgoo, Western Australia. Located 500 kilometers north of Perth, with 200 residents, Yalgoo offers free land and council flexibility. A full setup costs about $67,000. Services are minimal and summers are extreme, but enforcement is light and freedom is high. Number 5 is Bundaberg Regional Shire, Queensland. With a city population of 70,000, rural blocks offer off-grid tolerance. Rainfall is 1,000 millimeters, and the climate is subtropical. A typical setup totals $139,000, but hospitals, schools, and shopping are close by. Number 4 is the Central Highlands, Queensland. With 30,000 residents, rural areas west of Emerald allow off-grid living. Rainfall ranges from 400 to 700 millimeters. A typical setup costs $115,000, balancing isolation with access to services. Number 3 is Walgett Shire, New South Wales. With 6,000 people, rural blocks cost $20,000 to $40,000. Rainfall is 500 millimeters, and solar is strong. A full off-grid setup averages $85,000, with hospitals and schools available. Number 2 is Moree Plains Shire, New South Wales. Home to 14,000 people, it offers artesian bore water and minimal enforcement. With $40,000 for land and $68,000 for infrastructure, this location provides rare, unlimited water access. Number 1 is Peru Shire, Queensland. This vast shire has 2,000 residents and sits 1,000 kilometers from Brisbane. Enforcement is virtually non-existent. Land costs $15,000 to $30,000. A full setup is about $82,000. Isolation is extreme, but regulatory freedom is unmatched. Off-grid living is not a lifestyle fantasy. It requires $60,000 to $140,000 real. Skills, resilience, and systems designed for sub-zero winters and 50-degree summers. Solar must cost at least $10,000 to $15,000, water systems $5,000 to $10,000, and sanitation $3,000 to $5,000. High rainfall areas like Bundaberg need only 20,000 liters of storage, while dry regions like Menzies require 50,000 to 100,000 liters. Climate-appropriate design is not optional. It determines whether a home is livable or merely survivable. In addition to rainwater storage, serious consideration must be given to bore backup systems, which typically involve drilling and casing costs between $5,000 and $10,000. Regions with artesian water, such as Moree Plains, hold a distinct advantage because they provide what is effectively an unlimited water supply, although the upfront drilling and casing expenses still apply. Water access and reliability are not minor details. They fundamentally determine whether off-grid living becomes a sustainable long-term lifestyle or an ongoing source of stress. Social isolation is another reality that cannot be ignored. It is significant, it is real, and it directly affects mental health and emotional well-being if someone is not prepared for it. While off-grid living offers independence and financial freedom, it also brings trade-offs that shape every part of daily life. That is why researching councils, testing locations, and building realistic budgets are essential steps before committing to this path. In ultra-remote shires such as Menzies, Yalgoo, and Peru, total populations sit below 500 permanent residents, spread across vast regions that stretch for thousands of square kilometers. In these areas, your nearest neighbor could easily be 10 kilometers away, requiring deliberate travel for any interaction. A town offering basic services might be 20 to 50 kilometers away, meaning even routine shopping requires a vehicle. In medical emergencies, travel times of 1 to 2 hours to reach a hospital with an emergency department are common. Social connection in these environments demands conscious effort, comfort with solitude, and acceptance of isolation. Despite those challenges, the financial impact of off-grid living is substantial and measurable. A Sydney renter paying $28,000 per year hands over $280,000 to landlords over 10 years and owns nothing at the end of it. By contrast, someone who invests $80,000 into a complete off-grid setup owns a permanent property outright with no ongoing housing costs. After 10 years, the renter faces another decade of rising rent, while the off-grid owner still holds property worth at least $80,000, plus added value from improvements and $150,000 to $200,000 in rent savings. That difference represents a genuine financial transformation. Ongoing living costs further widen that gap. Off-grid households eliminate electricity bills, saving $2,000 to $3,000 per year, remove water bills, saving $1,000 annually, avoid sewage charges, saving $800, and eliminate rent, which typically ranges from $20,000 to $30,000 per year in regional areas and much more in cities. With only food, vehicle fuel, maintenance, and minimal council rates remaining, total annual living expenses can realistically fall below $15,000. A person earning $40,000 per year while living off-grid spends roughly $15,000 and saves about $25,000 annually. Over 10 years, that builds to $250,000 in savings and investments. In comparison, someone on the same income living in Sydney pays $28,000 in rent plus $15,000 in other costs, spending $43,000 per year and saving virtually nothing. After 10 years, the Sydney renter holds zero assets, while the off-grid resident owns property worth $80,000 plus $250,000 in savings, a total of $330,000 in wealth from the same income. This lifestyle is not for everyone. People who require constant social interaction, regular cultural events, urban amenities such as restaurants and entertainment, or conventional career pathways will likely struggle. Without those, they may become isolated, unhappy, and ultimately abandon the project at a financial loss. However, for those who value solitude over crowds, nature over concrete, independence over convenience, simple living over consumption, and financial freedom over social status, off-grid life can deliver a level of contentment rarely found in conventional systems. The skills required are real but learnable. Maintaining a solar system is straightforward with basic electrical knowledge. Managing water becomes a logical exercise in conservation and planning. Gardening and food production improve with experience. Building repairs and maintenance develop naturally over time. The learning curve is steep at first, but with persistence, it becomes second nature. Online resources, off-grid communities, and hands-on trial and error all contribute to that skill development. The relationship with local councils is also critical. Shires that formally support alternative housing remove much of the stress by providing legal certainty. In areas with informal tolerance, some regulatory risk remains, but real-world experience shows enforcement is rare in remote regions. Community conditions also vary widely. Some locations offer cooperative off-grid networks, while others leave residents completely on their own. Before committing, the lifestyle should be tested honestly. Spend weeks or months in the target area, not just a few days. Experience the summer heat and winter cold. Observe water availability during dry periods. Speak directly with Shire planners about enforcement. Talk extensively with people already living off-grid about real challenges, not just the appealing side. A comprehensive budget is essential because setup costs almost always exceed initial estimates as systems require upgrades and improvements. Water storage grows, solar capacity expands, and dwellings need modifications for comfort. A realistic budget for a reliable long-term setup is at least $100,000. This is not a temporary experiment. It is a permanent lifestyle shift. Returning to urban living later involves significant financial, practical, and psychological costs. The decision must be made with full commitment and clear expectations. When viewed against Australia's housing crisis, the contrast is striking. $80,000 can buy permanent independence through off-grid ownership, while the same amount represents only a one-third deposit on a city property that still requires a $600,000 mortgage. The traditional path appears increasingly irrational when compared to outright ownership and freedom. These opportunities exist. Off-grid living is legal or tolerated in specific locations. Setup costs are manageable relative to conventional property. Freedom from ongoing expenses changes lives. And a meaningful, satisfying life can exist outside mainstream systems. This is not abandoning civilization. It is choosing independence, ownership, and financial freedom over status and consumption.